The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
This is Milo. Pets are family. But every year, 10 million go missing. And the way we look for them hasn't changed in years. Until now. One post of a dog's photo in the Ring app starts outdoor cameras looking for a match. Search Party from Ring uses AI to help families find lost dogs. Since launch, more than a dog a day has been reunited with their family. Be a hero in your neighborhood with Search Party. Available to everyone for free right now. Join the neighborhood at ring.com.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Financial Rebellion with Catherine Austin Fitz, without Catherine Austin Fitz today. And we have Renette Senum here of Foghorn Express. And you all have, those of you who follow us have met Renette numerous times. And we're going to be talking about what does surveillance have to do with sovereignty, or vice versa? What does sovereignty have to do with surveillance? And we just have so many stories involving surveillance. And we've selected the Super Bowl ad, which you just saw. And I have to say, I did not watch the Super Bowl, but for some reason they must have run the ad, at another time. And I saw that ad and I thought, oh my God, they're appealing to people's love of pets. They're going to get away with this. And what happened? There was a backlash. Lou, you have a story on that. Ring cancels flock deal after dystopian Super Bowl ad prompts mass outrage. So I guess the American people are smart enough to think, oh my God, if they can find my dog anywhere, they can find me. What do you think, Renette?
I saw this too, and it was before I heard about the backlash, and I was absolutely horrified. I thought, oh my gosh, exactly. They're trying to placate the American people, saying, oh, look at how wonderful this is. We're gonna find your lost dogs. And Americans are really starting to get tied into what's really, really going on. And now they realize that these wireless cameras are connected to a massive international surveillance dragnet, essentially. And then now that they realize, well, if you can recognize my dog, that means you can recognize me, and that you can track me, and that this is connected to something larger than my own little home surveillance system. And so it has been a huge wake-up call for Americans. And I am seeing on X, I am seeing on Instagram, I'm seeing on Telegram, people are like, get rid of your Ring camera, throw it away. There are other options. There's options where it's not connected to wireless. The cameras that I have actually have little chips in them, or little, like thumb drives, and I can just pull them if I need them. But I make sure that I have no wireless in my home or outside of my home, because also it's all hackable, right? They now know that earbuds are hackable, and there's actually hackers listening to earbuds that you put into your ears, baby monitors and so on. And it never dawned on the American people that, oh my gosh, they can do the same thing with my Ring cameras. And if they can surveil and track my dog, that means they can track me. So it was a beautiful backlash. Beautiful.
Yes, yes. And we may as well dive into our topic today is data sovereignty.
Yeah.
And we started with sovereignty, and then we thought, wait a minute, really, we're talking about data sovereignty, and
Yes.
there's quite a lot available on data sovereignty. But I looked up what is sovereignty, and I came across, in political theory, sovereignty means a state has ultimate authority within its borders. So when we're talking about individual data sovereignty, that means you are completely in control. And of course, there's no way you can be completely in
Right.
control. The point is, how do you minimize for your state, for example? I mean, I asked ChatGPT about state sovereignty, and they started talking about nation state sovereignty. It's like,
Hmm.
no, no, I'm talking about a state within the United States.
Right.
And the fact is, and you wanted to get into this, Renette, there is a limit to how much a state can do in terms of having complete sovereignty because of constitutional provisions.
Right.
But there also are things that a state can do to keep control over what it has sovereignty over under the Constitution and physically and in its contracting to have as much sovereignty as possible. You want to tell us about the federal implications to state sovereignty?
Right. So there's a constitutional clause called the Commerce Clause, and this is a constitutional protection for business, for interstate business, and it really was germinated through the railroads. When they were laying the railroad tracks across America, there was a lot of overreach and taking of seizing of private land, and so on. And so it kind of came from that. In fact, here in Nevada City, Senator Aaron Sargent played a role in firming that up. However, what's happened is if anything is related to interstate commerce, that is telecoms like cell towers, that is even airspace for like air travel, energy grids, and so on, there's federal preemption. And so what's really, really important is people have to understand that the Commerce Clause is not, it's not like a death knell where you have absolutely no control. You do have some control for sure. But it's really, really important that people fully understand what their authority is, what they can and what they can't do. Now, if you think you're going to go in there, for instance, like with the data centers, with Trump's executive order saying, okay, we're going to have AI infrastructure everywhere from power grids to data centers and so on, and there's nothing you can do about that. Well, you can't stop it, right? If you have an area that is zoned commercially, for instance, within that framework, they can do what they want, but you have some ability to do something. So it's really, really important that people understand that these areas, these areas for your city and your county, you're not completely legal constrained. When you have areas for like placements, process, control of zoning, this is where your power is. And so when people go out there and say, we want to stop the AI center, the data centers altogether, you're going to get steamrolled. You're going to get completely steamrolled. So it's really important that the public go out there, educate themselves on the Commerce Clause. And when they are fighting against something, they have to be really good in recording what their public comment is, every piece of evidence, every objection. You have to learn how to build the record. And that ultimately becomes the foundation for legal challenges, for policy shifts, for also accountability. It's paramount that you hold these businesses, these companies, and even your federal government, you have to hold them accountable, but you have to understand where that accountability is and where your power is as well. And most people don't realize what the Commerce Clause is. So when an AI center comes in, or a data center, or for instance, the telecom companies are coming in, we think that we have the right to completely stop them, but we don't have that power like we used to. There has been a lot of growth and overreach through the federal level preemption, but we still have some local control. And so I really want to make this very clear to people out there across the United States. It's important that you start really getting people together, understanding the Commerce Clause, understanding federal preemption, understanding what your local authority really is, and start getting people to run for your planning commissioner roles, for your city council, positions, and your county supervisor positions, and have them be very, very clear on where that line is drawn, so that you are actually standing in a place of power rather than thinking that you're going to be you're going to be steamrolled, or that there's nothing you can do whatsoever, or that you have powers that you don't have, and then you end up losing the war.
Well, now, one of the things that's been pointed out is, in some senses, it's more important at least for a state, or it would be a city or a lower jurisdiction, you have more power in your procurement than you do with legislative backup. And you have been a jurisdictional executive? Is it a city?
It's a city.
Nevada City.
Council, yes.
And I'm assuming you have some familiarity with the procurement process. Do you think it would be helpful to have programs to teach people who are in executive functions within towns, cities, states, to understand what things in contracts are important in order to take as much power, not give up any more power than you have to?
100%, because contractual law supersedes constitutional law, right? People don't realize that. It's like, yeah, you have constitutional rights, but when you sign on the dotted line, you might have just given them all over. In fact, that happens all the time. And that's one of the reasons why we're also being surveilled upon, is because in those contracts, whether it's for your iPhone, your earbuds, your contract with your ordinance, with the telecoms, it's the little tiny, right, the print, the small print where you don't realize you're giving over your privacy. I'll give you an example: waste management. People do not realize that with waste management here in, let's say, California, that in the small print, it basically says that you don't have any control or say over your garbage and your recyclables. Once you give that over, they can film it, they can video, tape it, which they're—
And there are Supreme Court cases supporting that.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. It is now their property. And so people don't realize that. So contractual law, there should, every city and every county right now, every jurisdiction should be teaching their leaders about contractual law, because what they don't realize is as a city council member, as a county official, when you are signing those contracts for your constituents on their behalf, you may not realize that you're giving over their privacy. You're
Right.
giving over their constitutional rights. And people don't realize how they think that, oh, I have constitutional rights. Well, not if you sign a contract that says differently. And people
Right.
have no idea. So yes, the procurement is extraordinarily important. And also, when it comes to it's so crazy too, because when it comes to, let's say, the surveillance we're seeing, not only do we have waste management that is videotaping and photographing all of our garbage and our recyclables within the trucks, but they also have cameras on the trucks that are videotaping and documenting what cars are in what driveways, who's driving down what streets. Now we find out that UPS is doing the same, FedEx is doing the same. So we're seeing this massive surveillance grid going on, this dragnet that was always for better service, for your protection, for lawsuits, for if there's an accident. And what we have not been seeing and reading and thinking about is the small print and what it is that we're quietly handing over.
Yes, and we've had a number of episodes where we've had Twyla Brace on
Right.
talking about the Real ID, and the importance of the Real ID is a federal identification.
That's
A
right.
state driver's license, if the state chooses to do so, and the League of Driver's License Bureaus, or whatever they call, tend to be very sympathetic to non-state interests and non-privacy interests. So they a lot of times the driver's license bureaus are doing things that the state legislators don't know they're doing.
Right.
But in theory, if you have a state driver's license and they collect information on that, that's not something that assuming you've got the right contract and the right control at the driver's license bureau, that information isn't just given willy-nilly to private contractors. I mean, it is going to private companies, but if in the contracts, if in the legislative attention, if in the enforcement, you have people who care about safeguarding privacy, then you have a better chance of not having your data all over the place used for advertising, targeting you because of your behavior. We have a story about Apple. Do you have a photograph of that, Lou? Apple just signed a contract with, actually just bought a company called something like Q.AI for $2 billion. And we're talking, the value here is software. These are not great big buildings, I assume, infrastructure, things that cost a lot of money. This is software. And this software is basically a pre-crime type of thing. It measures like your expression on your face and your body language and all sorts of things to determine like what your intent is and what you're thinking.
This is, Twyla says, this is the minority report. This is very, very dangerous. I mean, they can go out there and just pick you up saying, sorry, we saw the wrong facial expression and we think you're going to murder someone, or we think you're going to blow up a building. It's just, this is absolutely insane. And so and this is also very much a slippery slope. We're seeing this everywhere from the border to ICE to Palantir to our federal government. And to kind of, digress again, what's really important about, let's say, the Real ID is that that does go into the federal database. And what you lose is the state's firewall of protection for them having their own jurisdiction and say and control over what happens with that information, with your ID. And once it goes into this massive federal database, it's fair game. Anyone can purchase it. You can have any kind of contract with any kind of company, and you're screwed. So every single layer of government you must consider it as a form of a firewall. It's a firewall of protection where you have local decision making, where you can actually really nuance it to your local geographic needs and desires, your concerns, to ensure that you have constitutional protections that might be usurped at the federal level. And so this is why it's really, really important that people get activated now more than ever to really get involved at the local city and county level and state level to ensure that we always have those firewall protections. Because once it goes to the federal level, we're already seeing it's a slippery slope. We're seeing it at every single level. And if it's happening it's happening to the immigrants, it's happening to the Muslims, it's happening to whoever, it's happening to the protesters, it's no big deal.
That's not me.
It's not me, right? We know that story, right? It's happening to the Palestinians. It's happening, whatever. If it's happening to them, it's not a matter of if.
You're on the menu.
You're on the menu. It's a when. It's a slippery slope, and that's what we're trying to show right now, folks. Is look at we are in that slippery slope. However, we are clearly seeing that when there is public awareness, when there's public pushback, it has an impact. It works. And we have got to do that now. We've got to understand the playing field, where our power is and where their power is, what's constitutional, what is not. And we've got to be activated now before it all gets locked in.
Yes. And it's very important for us to all understand which things are within state control and which things are within federal control, because there are a number of executive orders that are claiming powers that are really within the state. But if we all don't know that, it doesn't help us to have constitutional rights. And there are we've seen in the whole fighting of cell towers that there are certain things, because the Telecommunications Act, and I go back and watch the Financial Rebellion on the Telecommunications Act amendments, because they have not gone through yet, and they basically destroy local control.
Right.
But there's certain things that, at least up until now, the states have control over, like nuisance. How pretty something is, and zoning.
Right.
Those are local things that you
That's
can
right.
control. And also, a lot of people don't realize healthcare, outside of the Medicare, Medicaid, all of that government involvement, but healthcare is something that is a state prerogative. And I have to say, I had two experiences in the same emergency room within 1 week. One had to do with me, and I'm fine. Had to do with heart palpitations, and I didn't know if I was going to have a heart attack or whatever. I won't go into detail about that. And then the other one had to do with someone else that I took to the emergency room. And I happen to know that I have very little information in these centralized databases. There's nothing there, because I try as much as possible not to go to doctors and not to tell them things I don't need to know.
Right.
And the other person has had operations and more situations where data was collected, and the difference in how we were treated was stark. And there were things. I used to have a client who's since died, whose ex-husband was a colonel and would have been a general, except the Army knew what he had done to his wife of 30 years, who'd served the U.S. military. He had figured out a way to get into the hospital records, into those central, I don't remember what it's called, but there's a central that you can consent to, which I did, and I don't know whether anybody can really not consent to it anymore. But there's a site that you can create, and it collects your data, your medical data. And he had figured a way to put in there that she was an alcoholic.
Oh,
Now she had liver damage because she was because of a health condition, but she was absolutely not an alcoholic. But the way people treated her, I don't know whether the connection is that they read that she was an alcoholic and therefore thought she was not somebody to be listened to or whatever, given the right drugs. But this being in the same emergency room over the same week, and the explanation from the hospital was, well, we're in a divergence state. No hospitals in the city other than us are collecting information, are allowing people into the hospital. It's like, I haven't heard that on the news, that the entire city of Cincinnati is locked down to hospitals. I mean, it was just, and this can be because there are collection points that various authorities or businesses that you have access to are able to see data, and you don't know what they're reading about you and making judgments, and perhaps not giving you the same rights or the same treatment that other people are getting. So
right.
that has to do with individual sovereignty. I have heard someone say just this week, well, if you don't have anything to hide, why do you care?
Yeah, I hear that's a response. I think that's been dropped into the culture, right, into the ethos of our thinking. Because like I have nothing to hide. It's like that has nothing to do with whether you have something to hide or not. It's how the story, the narrative of you is framed, and how the system will react and treat you. And sometimes really innocent information can be misconstrued. If you are in a lawsuit, if you are in a divorce, if there's some kind of legal claim, if you are in a battle with your employees, if you get fired, you think illegally, you have no idea how innocent information can be misconstrued, as this person was experiencing. She was not an alcoholic. She had another condition. There's something else going on. So this is not about, well, I'm innocent, I'm a criminal, I'm not, I have nothing to hide. It's like, we all know how, no offense, attorneys can be, and it can get ugly really, really fast. And so the less information your government has about you, the better. And to
Yes.
be quite frank, it is none of their business to have really this information about you. They are there to serve you. They are not there to monitor you. They are not there to control you. They are not there to dictate what you can and you can't do, what services you should and should not have, and the quality of life and so on. So it is turned on its head. And we are at this extraordinary turning point in America where it is racing quickly to the finish line, right? This complete surveillance grid, digital surveillance grid, and yet there is an awakening happening as well. So when people, and I hear people say, well, there's nothing you can do. What are you going to do about it? It's a done deal. It absolutely, speaking from being involved firsthand, that is not true. I mean, your elected officials, even though I do believe a lot of the elections are somewhat rigged and numbers aren't correct, your elected officials, they still want to be voted in. And when they start to hear rumblings where people are not happy and you're not doing what they want you to do, and they feel like they're not going to get elected a second time, they will still respond. And you have the ability to jump in at the local level, at the county level, state level, city level, whatever, to actually make sure that we're still being represented and that our constitutional laws are still in place. We're still there. And so we're at a breakneck pace right now to that finish line. And we're seeing that signs of that slippery slope everywhere. So when people say there's nothing you can do, I just have to say, I emphatically disagree. That is just not true whatsoever.
Denver and Oak Park, Illinois, are two places that people may have read about in the media, that where people have risen up and gotten the license plate reader contracts with Flock canceled. And I know there's an active group in Arizona also, and there are some state laws. There's something like 4 states. Arkansas is one. I don't remember all the others off the top of my head, but there are 4 states that have taken action to limit the license plate readers.
Right.
And Nebraska apparently has, an old law which may not be terribly useful, but does govern it. So asking yourself, and I'm not. AI is useful and dangerous at the same time.
Right.
But there is a whole lot you can find out
Right.
and check it out. Look at the sources because they generally cite sources. And sometimes it's Wikipedia, and Wikipedia usually footnotes where they get information from. And don't judge someone according to whether Wikipedia thinks they're a conspiracy theorist, but on factual issues and articles about things, Wikipedia and, AI may be biased. It may only tell you some of the sources, but those sources can help you find out what the deal is. And if you go in and ask these sources, what governs it in my state, in my locality? It's pretty amazing how much information they have. And then you can go from there to do the research. You've done a good deal of research on AI lately, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I've used it a lot. So and I talked to you about this the other day. I've been working on a petition for rulemaking around geoengineering and commercial aviation. And what we pulled together is going to be a bombshell for Americans. They have no idea what's really going on in the atmosphere. But nonetheless, I said to you, Carolyn, that I could not have done this without AI. Mind you, I spent about over 400 hours on this petition. 125 hours. Now it's more than that. I predicted that's been kind of just chasing my own tail and dealing with hallucinations and incorrect URLs and mismatched, studies that have the wrong author versus the wrong date and so on. A lot of that craziness, that'll get better and better over time. But nonetheless, it's very similar to like water. Water can bring you life or it can bring you death, right? You can drink it and it'll keep you alive, or you can be waterboarded and you drown. So like AI, it can be used as an extraordinary tool. However, every single AI, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, or so on, I've used pretty much all of them. I like a good majority of them for this petition, and they have certain strengths and they have certain weaknesses and they have certain lenses they look through. A lot of them are very left-leaning. Like, for instance, the ones I was dealing with Chat originally was very pro climate change. Like, no, we're not going there. We don't buy that. We don't believe that. And I had to keep correcting Chat. Like, no, we're not doing the climate change paradigm. Sorry, we're not doing that narrative. And so there's all of that, and people are afraid of it. But the thing is that it's not going to go away. And if we don't use it as a tool to protect ourselves, to reinforce our constitutional rights, to build a better world, they're going to use it, and they have been using it. In fact, I have no doubt they were probably using AI during COVID. I have no doubt they're using AI to say, how's the public going to react? What do we do? How do we cut them off the pass? How do we shift this narrative? I have no doubt they're using AI to craft the framework for COVID to keep us, in control. And so it's not an evil thing. It's like anything. It's how you utilize it. However, when it comes to the infrastructure, like the energy grid and the data centers and so on, this is where we have got to go out there and be very, very proactive, because that is what is usurping local law. And it's even usurping constitutional rights. And so that's where we have to really get engaged. And you might as well use AI to empower yourselves. For instance, talking about flock cameras, most of our legislators, most of our city council members and county supervisors have not been aware that these little cameras popping up are part of the flock license plate reader and surveillance state and so on. We've all thought that it was part of our local police department. Once you educate them on, hey, did you know this is not your police department or your sheriff's? This is a third-party data collecting, and they're surveilling not only us, but they're surveilling you and your family and your children and your comings and goings and where you're shopping, where you're going, who you're visiting with. And all of a sudden, when your legislators and your local leaders realize this, they don't like it either. And one of the best and most powerful ways to make it very clear on what's going on in your local area is to do a Freedom of Information request known as a FOIA, or in California, it's called a public records request, a PRA. And so you do that, and this is where AI comes in very handy. When people say, well, I don't know how to do a FOIA, I don't know how to do a PRA, how do I do that? You just go to chat, say, hey, look these are the things.
I want to do a FOIA. Write it for me.
Right, write it for me, right? And you say this, and sometimes you have to kind of massage. You say, okay, that's kind of right, but that's not. I want a little bit more. Change this. I'm not interested in that. Let's go over there, and you just massage it, and you kind of learn. It's a tool. It's a tool. So
Right.
you learn how to use it. But the thing is that I realized that over a year ago when AI came along, and I realized there had not been any court cases that I wanted to see in the court systems regarding geoengineering and which ultimately is also commercial aviation, I realized that I don't have to go out there and raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an attorney firm to write it for me. It might take me time. I might have a massive learning curve, which I did, but I can actually write my own petition for rulemaking, which I've been doing. Now, mind you, I do have a team of attorneys looking it over and reviewing it and, also correcting it or redlining it, whatever, making sure it's on point. But I have done by far, myself and Jim Lee, the bulk of the work. And that is a game changer. That would not have been available to me without AI. And I would have been stuck going out there, maybe being able to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for a legal team to do it for me. So, folks, it's like saying if you're in a war, okay, I'm going to stick with my bows and arrow while they have a bomber, right? While they have drones. You're not going to stick with the bows and arrows. You're going to use the most updated weapons you have to fight against this system. AI is part of that. Now, mind you, we've got to control the infrastructure. We've got to control the federal preemption. We've got to make sure that we understand what the Commerce Clause is and what we do have in our pocket and what we don't have, what we can fight legally and what we can't. And the other thing is too is I would also start really pushing at the state level. Our legislators say, hey, look it. Why do we actually stretch this conversation and go beyond, okay, we have to have these massive data centers. We have to suck all the water away and take all the energy from our power grids and raise the electrical prices and so on, of our energy, our bills. I would also like to challenge the legislators saying, can we start getting a little bit more creative? AI is not going to go away. Data centers are going to be necessary. Power production is going to be necessary. Cooling down the computers is going to be necessary. Why don't we start having state level or national level competitions like on research and development, kind of like the X Prize, right? And start challenging and going out there and promoting technology that does not need to tap into the energy grid and drive up our prices, that does not require us having to suck all the water out of our aquifers, right?
We're back to the power of contract. If there's somebody negotiating the contract, let me ask you something. I was thinking of two things having to do with contracts. One is, I know that in the case of the data centers, at least one in Ohio, in the birthplace or former residence of our beloved vice president, there was a data center, and the contract for the data center, I think it was with Amazon, there was a clause that's a non-disclosure clause. Couldn't you have a state law or at least a protocol or a policy to require that everything having to do with the situation that just has to be disclosable under the Public Records Act, even if a contractor has control over the data? Because I know that at least at the federal level, when we tried to get information from HUD, when we were litigating, we submitted FOIA requests, and basically the guys at HUD said, oh, we don't keep the data. That's a contractor. And you send it to the contractor, and the contractor says, we're not susceptible to FOIA.
Right. No, they kind of pass the ball back and forth and say, not me, them, and so on. So,
but if you put something in the contract that says, if you want the contract, you're going to have to report as if you are the government.
100%. You can. It's contractual law. You can kind of do whatever you want. Right? If you're going to sign on to it, you're signing on to it, and you're essentially waiving your constitutional rights or transparency rights and so on. So yes, you can. And also I go back to, even though it is highly, highly limited as far as process, of like applications, let's say, and setbacks and aesthetics and environment and so on, you still have a lot of power. And I've mentioned this once before on the Financial Rebellion, which was back in the 80s when chain stores were really big and they're popping up everywhere and taking over the mom and pops. We could not stop them, right? We could not stop them because they had the right, if it was a commercial zoning, they had the right to put whatever business they wanted to as long as it was a legal business. And so our planning commissioners were very just brilliant. I'm like, okay, we're not going to stop you, but what we can do is say, all right, if you're going to put signage outside of the storefront, it cannot be logos. So it can't be the golden arches of McDonald's. It can't be the logo of a Burger King or whatever, or the Gap. It has to be like, if it's Burger King, it has to be a burger. If it's like McDonald's, it has to be like some French fries. Nonetheless, that little signage, right, ordinance that we had in our city, in Nevada City, stopped the chain stores and restaurants from coming in. So when people think that you have no power there, it's like, no, 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 no. This is where creativity, this is where imagination, this is where it comes in. And this is where it's really important for people to understand what the Commerce Clause is, what it isn't, what your local jurisdiction can and cannot do. And then you go out there and you literally look for the smallest little gear and the mechanism of all these larger gears. They're like, okay, if we just hit this one little gear and we rotate it that way, it changes everything else. And that is the power of local government.
Yes, and you can have clauses in the contracts for
Yes, you
the
can.
procurement that
Yes.
say, you can not have clauses that say there will be no disclosure. You can put in that there's transparency to the people
Right.
and access to the information. And the
Right.
other thing is, I tell clients did when I was practicing privately, you need to read your contract
Mhm.
and you need to not listen to what is told to you verbally. You need to get it in your contract. Now, the city of Denver had a contract with, it may have actually been the police department, a license plate reader contract, and they were told by, this is according to the news, it's what I believe.
Right. Right.
I'm not standing behind it. But the news reported that the council members said, oh, yeah, but they've told us they're not going to disclose the information to ICE. Whether you like ICE or not, that's the federal government. We're the only ones who can have access to that data. And the fact is, that was not true. I want to know, was that in the contract?
Yeah. Well, and the problem
Because
with
you
all
got an action. You can enforce a contract.
well, and the problem with all this, folks, is that if you have anything that's being stored and collected and stored in a cloud, right? If it's something that's part of a larger system, it's going to get hacked. I mean, it's hackable, and the more reliant we become on these things, the more the hackers are going to target them. So this is one of the reasons why our argument is like, look at folks. The best thing for us is not to have so much wireless everywhere, from your baby monitors to your AirPods to your iPhones. When something is wireless and is going over the airwaves, it's hackable. That's why we have been going out there and pushing for, saying, look at, not only did we pay for instance, broadband, hardwired broadband to every single house and business. We paid for that through our phone bills. But this is why we're pushing for it, is because that stuff is not hackable. It's durable, it's long lasting, it'll be there for 50 years, not for like 5 years. And it's unhackable. And so that is why we're pushing for this stuff. So the more we go wireless and the more cameras we have, the more we are actually participating in our own surveillance open air prison. And so I believe this Ring doorbell snafu that happened with Super Bowl has been an extraordinary opportunity for all of us to become aware of, like, wait a second, I didn't know my AirPods could be hacked and they could listen to me whether I have them on or not. I didn't know that my phone, whether it's on or off, you can be listening to me. I didn't know that my flock cameras that I thought was connected to my police department have really nothing to do with it. So all of this. So this is the moment, folks, that we really wake up, and the most important thing is educate yourself. You go to your legislators, you go to your local leaders, you educate them. And generally, when they find this out, they don't like it either, because they don't want to be surveilled on as well. So it's an extraordinary moment we're in right now, Carolyn. It's really extraordinary.
Yes, and now we have another really important story we want to make sure and get to, and it's about Palantir.
Mm.
Lou, do you have a headline for us on that? The background is the Swiss Army, I believe, or I don't know whether they call it the Army, but the equivalent of the Swiss Army, decided to either cancel a contract or not hire Palantir, which is the
So
sector of darkness in collection of data that is used, among other places, in Gaza,
right.
to locate people who are allegedly terrorists, who might or might not be terrorists, or maybe they're 90% sure they're terrorists and they bomb their building or whatever. But Palantir is blanketing the globe trying to get contracts, and the Swiss authorities hired a third-party contractor to do an examination of the sovereignty issues, among others, but they were focusing on what do we lose if we entered into this contract with Palantir, and they decided not to use Palantir, and Palantir actually has a lawsuit, and it's not really. It's a lawsuit to make transparent. And you see, they're using the argument that things should be transparent to their own benefit. They're saying we have a right to challenge the conclusions of this private service that did the study, and to show how it's all wrong. But my interpretation of what their argument is, they're saying, yeah, but you didn't even look at the mechanisms and how wonderful the service is, and that's not what the government of Switzerland was concerned about. And I will comment that we have reported in the past that there are a couple of cantons in Switzerland that have put in their constitutions the right to an internet-free life. And so, we should be thinking, following the Switzerland, and in some areas, I mean, in other areas, you have to pick and choose.
Just to let you know, my lights just blinked. So we're having a massive snowstorm. So if I go off the air, I just lost my power. But I just saw a dimming. So just so you know, you're right. They're catching on to this, and they realize that they have to write it in again at the local level, which they can do, especially around contractual law. And I have to say, what the Swiss government realized, Carolyn, was that they saw that what's happening in Palestine, and with Palantir in particular, is the Lavender, right? The Lavender program. And the Lavender program was a program where they're like, oh, okay, according to this AI analysis, you are an enemy and we're going to strike you. But what they were doing is they were striking them when they were living in their apartment complex with their family. And they were making sure that when they struck them, they either obliterated everyone in the family in the whole entire apartment or block, or that at least the children got to see their father or their mother get obliterated. And again, if it's being done to someone else, it's only a matter of time if it's going to be done to us. And that's what's happening, is that we are seeing this setup for us around the nation. The Swiss government is seeing the same darn thing, and they're realizing how extraordinarily dangerous this is. And they have the ability to go out there and target people in ways without the government even knowing, right? Through Wi-Fi and through frequencies and different things in technology, they do have the ability to target individuals with the government never, ever even being told or informed this is going on. It's extraordinarily dangerous.
Yes, and the Palantir software, that software, they can they can integrate it with a drone.
Oh, yes.
That has a machine gun attached,
yes,
and or a camera.
Yes.
And that is a very powerful thing. And, even if you've got 95% accuracy, think what happens. I mean, people's names get mixed up, so they're going after somebody who's got a similar name. I mean,
or you're just sitting having lunch with them, and you're just an innocent, friend just having lunch. I mean, and what you're just seeing right there are swarm bots. I saw this years ago on Black Mirror, the television show, which was, I'm sorry I had that in my mind, and I thought, oh God, I hope this is years away, and it wasn't really that far away at all. And so they do have the ability to have these swarm bots just come in, and they're tiny and they're small, and they can penetrate walls, they can hit you in the head and blow up. And I mean, we're now seeing in the Ukraine, we are seeing these swarm bots and these drones actually doing just that. They're going out and they're running out in the field, they're flying out in the fields, chasing military men, and they're swatting at them, and they're trying to fend them off, and the bots come in and just blow them up. I mean, this has been the wartime tactic in the Ukraine as well, and it's really, really, really hard to fight off. So this is an extraordinary slippery slope. This is truly a dystopian future we're looking at. And we do have a current government right now that is handing over the keys to these private corporations that are surveilling and spying on us and absolutely having no transparency. And they do have nefarious goals. And so I'm really proud of the cities and the state and the legislators and the nations who are now catching on to this, because they realize that the clock is ticking. This is a fast moving train that we're on. And that is because people are waking up so quickly. So it's more imperative now than ever that people really get educated and go out there during public comment at the city council meetings and say, do you realize what's going on? Here's a public records request. Here's our FOIA. You need to understand what is happening in your own government, and you need to protect us. That is your job.
Right. Right. I mean, we have much more power than we realize, and authority. But if we don't exercise it, is I did some research on a question asked. So what's the difference between in surveillance between and sovereignty between an authoritarian government and a democratic government? And a democratic government does not have all the power in the executive and has enforcement authorities for the laws and doesn't make centralized decisions
Right.
that impact people without a right to transparency on the part of the governed and a right to do something if the law is broken. And
Right.
so ask yourself, when you see things like this go on, is that a characteristic of an authoritarian government, or is that a characteristic of a democratic government?
Right.
And if you're leaning in the authoritarian side, you need to ask what we can do to bring in the legislature, bring in the judicial process, because we have three branches of government. We don't just have one branch of government, but if everything gets concentrated in the executive, and you understand government agencies are all part of the executive. They're not part of the judicial branch, and they're not part of the legislative branch. If you have a legislature that votes completely according to a group without looking at individual things, aspects of the laws, you don't have legislative power.
Right. This is where decentralization is really, really key. And I say to people, one of the best protections you have is to just decentralize everything. I mean, I wish we had more decentralized, energy providers. For instance, we have Pacific Gas and Electric here. They have a monopoly, and they are they run around like a terrorist organization. And I'm not, being dramatic. They just really do. They terrorize everyone that I know, cutting down trees and cutting off power and destroying businesses and so on. So that's because all that power has been centralized under one roof. And so decentralization is key. And the more federal exertion that we have, let's say, for instance, like with the Commerce Clause, the expansion of the Commerce Clause is really a danger, and that has been growing and growing and growing over the decades. That is why we're battling the telecoms like we are. That's why we're battling the data centers like we are, is because of that decentralization is being destroyed. So it's key to make sure and to ensure that our legislators protect that. And again, we have to jump into those seats, folks. I mean, let me just tell you, when you are an elected representative, the information you get is very different, from the inside is very different than what the public gets. You're going to make different decisions because you have more information. And the other thing is too, is that what's so extraordinary is that you actually have a vote at the table. You actually have influence over how agendas are set. What topics are you talking about? How you're looking at things, the influence you have over your staff. These are the things that you want to make sure that you have people on your side who understand that, and also who listen to you. And I have to say that as a representative, whether I have a person who I consider a friend or a foe, they always have some important piece or element that is going to help me make a better and more informed decision. So now more than ever, I hear people saying government doesn't work. And look, I understand there's a lot of corruption. I understand that the higher up government goes, there's more there's lobbyists, there's people are being paid off and blackmailed, and so on. But the local level, that is once again still the best place for you to have an informed decision and an empowered place where you can actually make a huge, huge difference in your community. So now's the time.
There is a theory that I heard expressed, God, 20 or 30 years ago, that I think is absolutely true, which is that the best government is that the decision makers are at the lowest possible level that is competent to make the decision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there are decisions that have to be made at the federal level. There are decisions that are best made at the state level. But there are many decisions that are made at higher levels, more centralized levels, that are where the most competent people to make those decisions are the ones at the local level, because every locality is different. And also, there's more sovereignty in your town in your family if the decision is closer to you and is with someone that you can appeal to.
Yeah.
And the cloud is one of the things that comes up in a lot of these searches about sovereignty and surveillance. And one of the things that is pointed out is that if you are storing your data on an international even
Yep.
cloud, you've got other countries who may have legal jurisdiction, at least according to their laws. And we've seen in Europe, we may have a right to free speech and a lot more privacy laws. They're not perfect, but they're more perhaps than some of the other countries. But if our businesses want to do business in Europe, in Canada, in Australia, not to mention China, they're going to have to comply with the laws of those other jurisdictions. And on a business level, that may be a good decision. But you don't want to enter into, for example, trade agreement. Trade agreements are risky because you're giving up some sovereignty. You absolutely I did reviews of trade agreements back when, and I think the ones that we were most afraid of were not entered into. But there were provisions that basically said the law is exactly what it is when we enter into this trade agreement. And if the country or the state or the city passes legislation that limits what a business can do and that causes damages to the business, there can be an international lawsuit for a violation of the trade agreement.
100%.
Oh,
Yeah. No, it's very true. And so you have to understand, and again, all goes back to local. So, and what we're really fighting right now is a lot of federal preemption, right? And that the preemption has become this quiet way that local democracy in the process actually gets bypassed. And so it's really important once again is that you don't ignore federal law. It's just it's to really understand it well enough to challenge it where it overreaches and then defend where local authority still stands. And people don't understand that right now. And I have to blame, I have to blame the education system. I have to blame, our own local government for not. People are in these positions. I have to tell you, Carolyn, they actually really don't understand the local law. They don't understand constitutional law. As you're saying, they don't understand procurement and contractual law. They don't really understand that stuff supersedes constitutional law. So it's very lackadaisical in many, many ways. And that to me has been by design. This is generations in the making of people not even understanding what the Constitution is or a Bill of Rights. And so it's really important that people go out there and start educating themselves because, again, I've experienced it time and time again. I have seen, because I've played a role in this, that when the public comes to the mic during public comment at a certain agenda item and they're empowered and they understand the topics and they understand the delineation of what powers they have and what they don't, helping the local representatives understand what's really going on. Carolyn, they're powerful. They are powerful, and they have influence. I see the change and the shift in our leaders' thinking. And so when you are empowered and you understand the lay of the land and the laws and what powers you have and don't have, and you go to that mic and you speak with that authority, you can sway the decision. You can sway the vote. I have seen it time and time again. And when you go to the mic and you're just talking and you don't really understand what's going on, but I just really don't like this and I don't like how it looks, and you're going to lose. You're going to lose. So education is key. And right now, people are like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, just educate yourself. Just learn, read some books. Go out there, understand contractual law, understand constitutional law, understand what zoning is and what your local government can do at the city level and the state level and the county level. The better you understand that, the more empowered you're going to be, and you're going to be speaking their language. So I say, folks, it's not this war is not over. And in fact, I think we have more power and more understanding right now than we ever have before of actually really pushing back. We're seeing the cracks right now. We're seeing the cracks.
right. And we have powerful tools at our disposal too. There's a media guy who I wasn't familiar with. I guess he's well known to some alt media people, named Ian Carroll, and I know you're familiar with this. He built a tool. He downloaded the Epstein files and actually used, I guess, AI. He had AIs compete against each other on the same questions to see which one was the best one to use, which one did the best job. And he filtered out apparently that half of the 3 million documents are duplicates. So he filtered out the duplicates and he loaded them in. And apparently if you want to search on the Department of Justice's site, it's a very clunky process. And you're basically going in and looking at individual documents. I mean, 3 million, how many of us can review $3 million documents? And so what he did is he downloaded that information into a separate data set, I guess, and he did some coding, I assume, and loaded in AI and made it so that he could ask questions, and AI searched all of those documents in a very intelligent way, and it may not have been perfect, but it pulls up the documents that are relevant to the question, and you can save them and you can write notes on them. I mean, that's more than the Department of Justice can do without AI. And apparently they didn't use AI to prevent themselves from,
Well, and I think the AI is figuring out how to bypass some of the redaction as well, which is really huge, right?
Yeah.
What's more important is like what's not being said. So I'm going to say this. What COVID unleashed was this. We have, from what my perspective, and I include myself in this, by the way, this grouping, we gave over our agencies to the talking heads and our leaders, and we believe they had it covered. And then when COVID struck, all of a sudden the threat was on the doorstep, and it woke a lot of people up. Since then, all these individuals, we did not know each other. I didn't know you. I didn't know Catherine. There's all these people I did not know. We now know each other. We are networked. We know who to trust, who's in the inner circle, who's in our outer circle, who to keep at a distance, who to bring in. And we are now much more educated. And now with AI, we have more tools than ever, as well as we as American citizens saw a failure in journalism, in the media. They were not only not doing their job, they were entrapping us and lying to us and deceiving us. So guess what? We've become our own journalists. We've become our own researchers. We've become our own, AI programmers. And I have to say, like, for instance, with the Epstein files, the redactions in the end are not going to work. In the end, it's all going to be unleashed because there's not hundreds, there are not thousands. There are millions of individuals out there who are now determined more than ever, and they're putting their heart and their soul to get to the bottom of this monstrous system that we've been trapped in probably for thousands of years. And so all I can say is this has been an extraordinary backlash, unintended consequence of COVID. We're seeing it even with like parents no longer going out there and giving their kids every single shot that they're required to get, right? They're like, no, I'm going to actually look at the data sheet and actually ask some questions of my doctor. So people are thinking it's done, it's over, there's nothing we can do. I'm like, I'm sorry, but as a person who's been in the trenches for over 20 years now, I am seeing some extraordinary signs that we've got this. You just can't back down and let go. And we're no longer giving over our agency. We're actually asking the hard questions. And when we don't get the answers, Carolyn, we're going out there and we're doing the research for ourselves. And if
But it's really it's really important to understand that we've already given up a huge amount, and that if we continue to allow this, it's going to be too late.
Well,
There'll
100%.
be a point
Well, 100%.
where they
No.
can completely control us.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, we're in the middle of the battle right now, right? I mean, there's like little wars. I mean, we haven't won this war. We're winning battles here. We lose and we win and we lose. But the point is that there's a lot of people who are now awakened, and I suggest you join the team. and we're doing our own research, not waiting for someone else to say, "Oh, I just saved you." It's like we're not waiting to be saved any longer. And there's always going to be a vast majority of people who are just going to keep sleeping until the day they die. That's just going to happen. But we don't need a majority of people, as we've spoken in the past. It's 3.5% of active participation that has won the Civil War, that has won these big, civil rights movements and the suffrage movement. It's a small group, 3.5, actively targeting and going after a particular goal that we actually win. And we're there now. And people are realizing now that we also have these tools available to us, which is like AI and other things, and jumping into, the political arena. And that is what we have for us. So my point is that we are waking up and we're not sitting back waiting for someone to save us. And so I'm going to say to all of you right now who are listening to this, this is your call. This is your clarion call to get activated if you're not. And you can go and you can join it in, whether it's saving your local library, ensuring you've got certain books, making sure that you can get a park, or you have a certain, natural path walkway, or that there is transparency laws, or that you understand contractual law at the local level. Whatever it is, you find whatever it is, that baton you want to pick up, and you go. And so that I'm actually seeing that. I never saw this kind of activation. And do we need more? Of course we do. But the activism that I'm seeing today did not exist 5-6 years ago. And we always need more. But the thing is this, is that when it comes to, let's say, for instance, the Epstein files and redacting and hiding the truth from us, in the end, I believe those days are going to be over, because we will, there's an army of people who are saying, no, not on my watch. And I'm one of them. You're one of them. Catherine's one of them. Ian Carroll is one of them. It's like, not on my watch. And I just really implore that people join that team and look at what impassions you when you get up in the morning. What makes you want to get up in the morning and go? Just what do you love? What do you want to protect? What do you want to ensure is there for generations? That is your playing field. So start getting involved and educate yourself on it.
Right. And we're out of time, but I do want to just say, if you think the Epstein, call it files, information, if you think that that's primarily about sex trafficking, you do not know enough about what's in those documents. It shows us, if we are awake, how the government works worldwide, and how influence works, and why certain decisions have been made, including involving the pandemic, involving programmable money. And we've got to sign off. We'll probably be talking about those things in later shows. But thank you so much for joining us. You are going to be joining us once a month for the foreseeable future.
We're live. Okay.
Hi,
Tell us your name, please.
my name's Jackie Swidler.
So, Jackie, you're here to talk to us about how your family and friends are not listening. And I think many people listening right now will be with you. So,
Yeah.
talk us through it.
So, I kind of knew what was going on because I go to an energy healer, and he was like, don't get the shot, blah, blah, blah. And so I didn't. I hate shots anyway, so I did not get it. But everybody I know, except maybe 4 people, got it. And, I've just been researching all the things, and I try to tell them, and no one will listen. And a lot of my friends whose cancers were in remission came back like 100-fold, And
So they had cancer, it was in remission, they took the shots, and you think it came back? Yeah.
And then cancers out of nowhere. Someone who got cancer and died within a year, and then closer family members, weird stuff ever since the shot. And she went in for a knee replacement and came out and can't urinate. She still can't urinate. It'll be 2 years in July, and I don't know who to turn to. And I think she's finally ready to try maybe alternative methods. So I'm trying to figure out who to send her to and what information, but it's like I can't talk about it because it's so delicate, and it's like my boyfriend's family, so it's not it's been a nightmare. And I go to all these like-minded people events, CHD, and I've been to the Defeat the Mandates. I make signs, stop the shots, and connect the dots. I do videos. I did a song parody to Paperback Writer, the Beatles, called COVID Vax Fighter. And I try to do it through comedy. I just can't convince anybody.
Are these people still taking the shots?
It's not some of, yes, I have relatives that just got their, the one with the flu shot, with bivalent or whatever, they're still lining up to get it. And it's like, and they're sick and they don't know why, and they're blaming it on, we're just getting old. And this is what happens. And they're like, I know you don't like the vaccine, but we believe in it. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to be so mean about, I'm just trying to help. And no one will listen. Just don't listen. And it's like I'm sitting there feeling like maybe I have the antidote for them, but they're just doing their Western medicine, and that one woman that she just has no diagnosis for not being able to urinate for almost 2 years.
So what would you like to see done?
I like it to come out more on mainstream media and celebrities and musicians coming out and talking about it. I mean, it's still, people don't believe it. Eric Clapton was vaccine injured and he was shunned by his people. And I mean, Richard Lewis, all these deaths, and people are just like, huh, normal, it's being normalized or something. I just don't understand. They're not seeing this.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, because the more of us that do that, the better it's going to be. And you don't know how it does actually affect people. You're planting a seed the whole time.
That's true.
Now, is there anything else you want to tell the people?
Just let's keep uniting and help spread the word however we can. That's all we can do. And speak up, like celebrities and musicians, you know, people listen to
And
people
you did
they
not
see.
get the shot. And how's your health?
It's okay, but I do feel shedding effects because my boyfriend got it. Like at night when I'm like cuddling or holding him, I feel like electricity through me. So, but I'm on tons of supplements to
You're not the first person to say that.
Really?
Yeah, other people have said the same thing. They feel this like tingling.
Yeah.
It's like it is like electricity.
5G or whatever, or my smart TV or whatever is happening. I should probably sleep with my phone in the other room, and that's interesting. See, if we all share our stories and connect, we can help each other. And if anyone knows if it's a similar thing with not being able to urinate, I would love to help.
I'm sorry. I don't
Thank
know
you.
who can help that, but I'm sure there's someone listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.